A study by Dr. Hal Hershfield at USLA found that when people imagine their future self, the brain activity looks almost identical to imagining a complete stranger. Not a loved one, a stranger. Which means when you say future me will handle the investing, your brain is literally outsourcing it to someone you don't even know. And here's what that costs you. If you started investing just $2,000 a month at 25 and waited until 35 to start instead, you would lose over $150,000 in potential wealth. Not because you spent it, not because you made bad decisions, but because you waited. If you have ever opened a brokerage account, started at it, and then closed the tab, this video is for you because today I'm not going to tell you what to invest in. I'm going to show you why your brain has been working against you this whole time and exactly how to fix it before it costs you another year. Coming up in this video, number 1, why you keep doing the opposite of what you know works. Number 2, why fixing your money feels scarier than just avoiding it. And number 3, why you say I will start tomorrow and actually believe it every single time. Stay with me. Here is something strange. The people who are most likely to be watching this video are not the people who know the least about money. They are people who know the most. They have done the research. They have understand the math. They could probably teach a class on index fund at this point. And they still have not started. Which means, and I need you to really sit with this, information is not your problem. You have enough information. You have probably had enough information for a while. Something else is happening. And nobody in the personal finance space wants to talk about it because it's not as clean as a pie chart or a compound interest graph. What's happening is psychological, it's emotional, and it's completely 100% fixable. But only if we are honest about what it actually is, instead of pretending one more video about ETFs is going to be the thing that finally makes you move. And here's the thing I want to establish before we go anywhere else. Procrastinating on investing has nothing to do with laziness. It has nothing to do with discipline. It has nothing to do with not caring enough. It's your brain running a protection program it installed a long time ago. And nobody, not your school, not your parents, not any financial advisor, ever taught you how to turn it off. That's what this video is actually about. It's not money problem, it is psychological. So, if it's not an information problem, what is it? Here's your diagnosis. And I mean that literally. What you have been experienced has actual names. It has been studied. It has been measured. And once you understand what's actually going on inside your brain when you try to make yourself invest, you're going to stop blaming yourself for it. Because you have been fighting your own biology this whole time without knowing it. The first thing you need to understand is something called present bias. Present bias is your brain's built-in tendency to prefer things that feel good right now over things that will be better for you later. And before you think, okay, that's just common sense, it goes way deeper than that. It's not just that your brain prefers the present. It's that your brain literally undervalues the future, not slightly, dramatically. In study after study, people make choices that they themselves agree are objectively worse, just because the payoff is further away. Think about it this way. If I offered you $100 today or $150 in a month, most people take the 100 today, even though they know. Logically, that waiting 30 days for 50 extra dollars is a fantastic return. The future version of that gain just does not feel as real as the present version. Your brain discounts it automatically without asking your permission. Now apply that to investing. The money you're putting in today is real. You can see it. You can feel the absence of it. The wealth it might become in 20 years, that's abstract. That is theoretical. That belongs to some future version of you that your brain doesn't fully believe in yet. Which brings us to the second thing, and this one is even more powerful. It's called loss aversion. And it was identified by two psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, in their landmark prospect theory research back in 1997. What they found is this. The pain of losing something feels roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. Twice as intense. That's not a metaphor. That is what the research shows. So when you think about investing, when you're sitting there with the app open or the brokerage account on your screen, your brain isn't running a calm cost-benefit analysis. It's not thinking this money could grow into something significant over time. What it's actually doing is screaming. This money could disappear. The potential loss feels immediate. It feels personal. It feels like a threat. And the potential gain, that feels distant and vague and honestly kind of like it belongs to someone else. And that loops us right back to what you heard at the beginning of this video. Dr. Hal Hershfield at USLA found that when people imagine their future self, the brain activity looks almost identical to imagining a complete stranger. Not a close friend, not a family member, a stranger. So when you picture the version of you at 65 who has a comfortable retirement, financial security, and real freedom, Your brain processes the person the way it processes someone you have never met. There is no emotional connection, there is no sense of protection. And so the idea of sending your current, real, present money to that stranger just doesn't feel worth the risk. This is why knowing what to do is not enough, because you're not failing to act because you lack information. You're failing to act because your brain has calculated incorrectly or sincerely that protecting your money right now is safer than growing it for later. It's not stupidity, it's not weakness. It's a protection program that evolved to keep you safe in a world where immediate threats were the only threats that mattered. The problem is you're not living in that world anymore, but your brain didn't get the update. And here's what makes this even harder. Present bias and loss aversion explain why starting feels difficult, but they don't fully explain why. The more you learn about investing, the worse the paralysis gets. Because if more knowledge was the answer, then the most informed people would be the most decisive. And that's not what's happening. If anything, it's the opposite. So what's going on there? That's exactly what we are going to the next. Why knowing more is actually making it worse. So you understand the first layer now. Present bias and loss aversion are working against you at the biological level. Your brain is treating investing like a threat instead of an opportunity. And it's doing that automatically. We need the level of conscious thought. But here's what's been quietly making the whole thing worse. The more you have learned, the more stuck you have become. And if you have ever noticed that about yourself, if you have ever thought, I have done so much research, why am I still not doing anything? I want you to know that's not a personal failure. That's a completely predictable psychological response to a very specific set of conditions. And it has a name too. It is called analysis paralysis. Now you have probably heard that term before, but the way it usually gets explained does not actually capture what's happening emotionally. It gets framed as too many options, can't decide, like it's just a logistics problem. Like if someone could hand you a simpler menu, you would be fine. But that's not really what's going on. Here's what's actually happening. The more emotionally invested you are in making the right decision, the more threatening every new piece of information becomes. Because every new option isn't just an option, it's a new way to get it wrong. And when you care deeply, when you have told yourself, I really need to get this right, this is my future, this matters, each additional choice carries additional risk. Not a financial risk, emotional risk. The risk of making the wrong call, the risk of looking back in 10 years and realizing you have picked the wrong fund, the wrong platform, the wrong strategy. And your brain responds to that kind of overwhelming, high-stakes uncertainty the same way it responds to any threat. It freezes. Barry Schwartz, a psychologist who wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice, found that the more options people have, the less satisfied they are with whatever they choose. And the more importantly, the less likely they are to make a decision at all. He studied this across dozens of contexts, and what he found over and over again is that more choice does not produce more freedom. It produces more anxiety, more second guessing, more avoidance. And the personal finance space is one of the most choice-saturated environments that exists. Index funds or individual stocks, Roth IRA or traditional IRA, Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab, ETFs or mutual fund. Contribute to your 401k first or open a brokerage account first. Lump sum investing or dollar cost averaging. Max out your emergency fund before you invest or invest while you build it. Every single one of those is a legitimate question. Every single one of those has people on the internet arguing passionately on both sides. And every single one of those feels like a trapdoor. One wrong step and you have made a mistake that compounds for decades. So what do? You research more, you open more tabs, you watch more videos, you read more threads, and each one adds another layer of nonce, another caveat, another well, it depends. And the gap between where you are and where you feel like you need to be before you can start, that gap keeps growing. And here's the part that nobody says out loud. The research loop feels productive. It feels responsible. It feels like you're being a thoughtful, serious person who is taking their financial future seriously. And in a way, you are. But it's also, underneath all of that, a very sophisticated form of avoidance. It's the open tab that never gets closed. It's the bookmark folder full of articles you will get to eventually. It's the YouTube queue of finance videos that keeps growing while the brokerage account stays at zero. The pursuit of the perfect investing strategy is not always ambition. Sometimes it's fear wearing ambition's clothes. And the reason that's so hard to see, the reason it works so well as an avoidance mechanism is because it looks from the outside and from the inside like effort, like progress, like you're almost ready. Just one more video, just one more article, just one more week of research, and then you will have enough to finally feel confident enough to start. But confident enough never actually arrives. Because the goal of the research stops being gather information to act. The goal quietly becomes find a reason to keep wearing that still feels responsible. There is analysis paralysis, not a logistics problem, a psychological one. And underneath present bias and underneath analysis paralysis, there is one more emotion that has been running the whole snow this entire time. One more emotion that neither of these terms fully captures. And it's the one that's genuinely the most expensive thing in your financial life. And even though it never shows up on a balance sheet, you're getting into that next. Shame spiral, the most expensive thing you own. So now you have the full psychological picture. Present bias makes starting feel dangerous. Analysis paralysis makes knowing more feel paralyzing. But underneath both of those things, there's one emotion that has been quietly making everything worse every single day you have waited. And that emotion is shame. Not guilt, shame. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I will say in this video. So stay with me here. Dr. Breen Brown, a researcher at the University of Houston who has spent decades studying shame and human behavior, draws a very clear line between the two. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad. And that difference is everything. Because guilt, as uncomfortable as it feels, actually motivates change. When you feel guilty, you want to fix the thing. You want to make it right. Guilt moves you forward. Shame does the opposite. Shame makes you hide. Shame makes you avoid. Shame makes you close the tab. Put down the phone and find literally anything else to think about. Because engaging with the thing you feel ashamed about means confronting not just the problem, but your own story about what the problem says about you. And here's how it builds in the context of investing specifically. Every day you don't start, the gap grows. The gap between where you are and where you feel like you should be by now. And as that gap grows, the shame grows with it. And as the shame grows, the avoidance deepens. Because now opening that brokerage amount is not just about picking an investment. It's about facing how long you have waited. It's about doing the math on what you have missed. It's about sitting with the uncomfortable reality that you knew what to do and you didn't do it. The account stops being a financial tool. It becomes a monument to everything you have not done yet. And so you don't open it, and another month passes and the gap gets a little wider. And the shame gets a little heavier, and the whole thing feeds itself quietly, invisibly in the background of your life. This is why I Will Start Tomorrow feels completely sincere every single time you say it. And I mean that. It's not that you're lying to yourself. Tomorrow genuinely feels easier because tomorrow is a shame-free zone. Tomorrow, the gap has not grown any further yet. Tomorrow, you have not failed again yet. Tomorrow, it still feels possible to start clean. So your brain reaches for tomorrow not because it's lazy, because it is protecting you from having to feel the full weight of today. The problem is tomorrow becomes today, and then tomorrow again, and the shame compounds just like the interest that was never earned. Here is what I want you to take from this section, because this is the part that actually sets you free. You're not broken. You're not uniquely undisciplined. You're not someone who just does not have what it takes. You're a person whose brain has been running a completely logical shame and avoidance loop, and nobody ever showed you the exit. The loop makes sense. The loop was protecting you the only way it knew how. But it has been costing you in real dollars, in real time, in real lost wealth. Every single one it's been running. And here's the good news. Once you can see the loop clearly, once you can name it, it loses a significant amount of its power over you. Because you stop experiencing it as the truth about who you are, and you start experiencing it as a pattern you didn't choose, a pattern you were never taught to recognize, a pattern you can absolutely interrupt. Which brings us to the part we have actually been waiting for. Because understanding why you have been stuck is only half of it. The other half is knowing what to actually do about it. And I promise you, the fix is going to be much smaller than you are expecting. The fix is smaller than you think. That is the point. Okay, so you have been carrying present bias, analysis paralysis, and a shame spiral, probably for longer than you would like it to admit. And if you're waiting for me to hand you a complex, sophisticated, multi-step financial strategy to fix all of that, I'm going to disappoint you because the fix isn't complex, and that is not a limitation. That is literally the point. Here's the first thing you need to understand. The fix cannot feel large. It cannot feel threatening, because the moment it feels large and threatening, your brain treats it exactly the same way it's been treating investing this whole time, as a risk to avoid. So if the action you're trying to take triggers the same fear response as the thing you have been avoiding, you have not solved anything. You have just dressed the problem in new clothes. What you need instead is something called a minimum viable action. BJ Fogg is a behavioral scientist at Stanford who has spent years researching how habits actually form in the human brain. And what his research shows is that the brain responds to completed actions, no matter how small. By releasing dopamine, that dopamine begins to rewire the association your brain has built around that activity. Slowly, steadily, repetition by repetition. So instead of invest $500 this week, the minimum viable action looks like this. Open the app, look at it for 60 seconds, don't invest anything, don't make any decision, don't pick anything, just look at it, close it, you're done. That's it. And I know how that sounds. I know a part of you is thinking, that's not real progress, that does not count. But here's what's actually happening when you do that. You're interrupting the pattern. Every time you have avoided opening that app, your brain locked that as confirmation. Investing equals threat, avoidance equals safety. The moment you open it and nothing bad happens, you are writing a new entry in that log. Investing equals something I do. Investing equals normal. Investing equals safe. You do that enough times and the emotional charge around it starts to dissolve. Not all at once, gradually, but genuinely. And once the emotional charge starts to dissolve, you move to the second part of this. You remove the decision entirely. This is where automation comes in. And this is arguably the most powerful financial behavior change available to you. Not because of the math, but because of what it does psychologically. You set up an automatic transfer, even $20, even $50 into an index fund on payday every single month, and then you don't touch it. Here is why that works when everything else has not. You cannot procrastinate on a decision you never have to make. The fear lives in the decision. The hesitation lives in the moment where you have to actively choose to move money from your account into an investment. Automation eliminates that moment entirely. The money moves before you even think about it, before the fear has a chance to active, before the shame spiral has a chance to spin up. And the amount at this stage is genuinely irrelevant. $20 a month is not doing to make you rich. That is not the point yet. The point is that money is moving. The habit exists. The identity starts to shift. You go from being someone who has not started yet to being someone who invests. And that identity shift is worth more in a long run than any specific dollar amount at this early stage. Because once the habit is there, growing it is easy. Increasing an automatic transfer from $50 to $100 to $500 is a completely different psychological challenge than starting from zero. Starting from zero is where all the weight is. Once you're moving, momentum does a significant amount of the work for you. So to bring it together, open the app, look at it, close it, do that until it feels boring. Then set up the smallest automatic transfer you can manage and let it run. That is the fix, not a course, not a perfect strategy, not waiting until you have more money or more confidence or more time. Just that. What every month of waiting actually costs you. So now you have the full picture. You know why your brand has been working against you. You know what the shame spiral looks like and how it feeds itself. And you know that the fix is smaller and more actionable than you ever thought it needed to be. But I want you to live with something concrete. Something that takes all of this out of the abstract and puts it into real, specific numbers. Because sometimes the most motivating thing isn't a psychological insight. Sometimes it's just a math, laid out plainly without any sugarcoating. So let's talk about what waiting is actually costing you. If you started investing $200 a month at age 25, at a 7% average annual return, which is a conservative estimate based on a long-term stock market historical averages, you would have roughly $525,000 by the time you are 65. Not because you invested a massive amount, because you gave your money time to compound. Now take the exact same person, same $200 a month, same 7% return, but they waited until 35 to start instead of 25. By 65, they have roughly $243,000. The 10-year delay didn't cost them $24,000. It cost them over $280,000, nearly 3 times what they actually put in during those 10 years of waiting. That's not a typo. That's compound interest working in reverse against you for every month you don't start. And if you want to bring it down to an even more immediate scale, every single month of delay costs roughly $700 in future wealth. Not $700 you spent, not $700 you lost in a bad investment. $700 that simply never got the chance to exist. Quietly, invisibly every month. That number is not here to make you feel bad. I want to be really clear about that. Because here's the thing about the time you have already waited. You cannot get it back. That's just true. And sitting in guilt or shame about it does not recover a single dollar. It just adds more weight to the avoidance loop that's already been costing you. What that number is here to do is make the present moment feel as real as your brain needs it to feel. Remember present bias, the reason your brain undervalues the future, the reason the gain feels abstract and the loss feels immediate. The antidote to present bias is making the future cost feel just as immediate as the present sacrifice. And when you know that waiting one more month costs you $700 in future wealth, that is not abstract anymore. That's a number that's real. That's something your brain can actually process as a present tense threat. And here's what's also true. And this is the part I really want you to hold on to. The second best time to start is today, not next month. Not when you have more money saved up. Not when the market looks less volatile. Not when you feel more confident or more ready or more certain about the right strategy. Today. Because the version of you who starts with $50 this month is in a completely different financial position in 10 years than the version of you who kept waiting for the perfect moment that never came. The gap between those two versions of you is not talent, is not income, it's not intelligence or discipline or having figured out some secret strategy that everyone else missed. It is just decision to start, made on an ordinary day with an ordinary amount of money without waiting to feel ready. Because ready is not a feeling that arrives before you start. Ready is a feeling that shows up after. After the first transfer goes through, after the first month passes and the money is still there, after your brain starts to look investing equals something I do instead of investing equals something I'm afraid of, you already know enough. You have known enough for a while. The only thing left is the smallest possible first step and the understanding that taking it today is worth quite literally hundreds of thousands of dollars more than taking it later. Now that you know why you have been stuck, the next thing you need to know is what changes once you actually get moving. Because here's the thing, the rules shift completely once you hit 10K. And most people don't see it coming. I covered exactly that in my video, why things work differently after 10K. It's on the screen right now. Watch it next.